this particular trip is quite typical of the kind of thing the Rosh Yeshiva does, and that is to really drive home to people the reality of being part of the destiny of Klal Yisrael, the idea that life is not just a smooth ride. There are real hard facts that you have to deal with. Hashem really does run the world, and hashgacha doesn't just mean everything's going to be sweet. We're used to thinking of hashgacha as a way of saying, yes, gam zulatov, everything's wonderful and everything's going to be fine. It's a nice way of making all the difficulties in life sweet, but there's something quite harsh, and that is that Hashem has demands. Making that a reality to people is something Reb Noach has been trying to do for years, and actually bringing people to Poland, having them see things with their own eyes. Everybody has changed. Really, everybody has changed. I understand this was made as an internal age project. This is something that every Jew should really see. This is something that everyone's got to consider. In hindsight, we look back at American Jewry during the Holocaust, and were it not for those Yechidim, the individuals that stood out, Gdolei Yisrael, Rav Leizer Silver, Rav Weissmandel, when he ran around, if not for the individuals that really tried to mobilize Jewry and do something, everyone else was apathetic. And in hindsight, we look back and we just can't understand how that is possible. We try to say they didn't really know. Today, there's a spiritual Holocaust going on, the proportions of which are just unbelievable. We're not talking about a third of the nation. We're talking about so much more than that. People that know nothing, people that are just so far away, people that are involved in everything but Judaism. And yet, Torah true Jews, by and large, are apathetic. Do we understand that? I think what's so powerful about the Poland trip is that it really wakes Jews up to how you can have something that is so drastic, so painful, proportions that are just unbelievable going on, and people are going about their merry way. Having that hit home so that we can recognize that we too cannot be guilty of just sitting back and then reading about it in the history books next generation.
We came here as leaders of Aish Torah to learn from the Rosh Yeshiva and to experience these places. In all the years that I've been involved in outreach, in Kiruv and in education, the experience of coming to Poland and experiencing the life that once was in Poland and the tragedies that befell Am Yisrael in Poland, this is just a huge, big dose of reality.
The Rosh Yeshiva, besides being one of the great idealists of the world, the Rosh Yeshiva is a very serious man. And he decided to take us to the biggest graveyard in the world. Poland is the biggest graveyard in the world. And he says to us, let's get serious. Let's take you to a place where you can meet death directly in the most horrible, horrific, unthinkable conditions, and see what it's about, and that will make you take your life more seriously. And that will make you tell other people to take life seriously. And when you do that, that's how you're going to change people and change the world.
Rabbi Weinberg brought us here in order to activate us. He brought us here to think about it. He brought us here to plan. He brought us here to be more effective. He brought us here to get us to become a little more real about the situation of the Jewish people. He brought us here to draw parallels of pre-war period when perhaps there was a lot to be done to save the Jews, comparing that to the current situation, specifically with the assimilation of the Jews. He brought us here to renew our resolve to save the Jewish people.
Never in my life, since I knew what was going on here, I never thought that I'd ever visit this place, this cursed place. Why'd we come here? Why'd I bring and ask all the fellows to come, all of our rabbis to come? To wake us up. The time is drawing closer. We are losing more neshamas every day than we're gaining. We're in trouble. We gotta wake up.
Hitler's the guy who writes it already in 1920. 1,000-year plan that will save the world. Kill the Jews, to rid the world of the Jews, and then finally to get rid of the Slavs. And so the ghetto themselves is a way of getting them together to get towards the final solution. So if you left here and went to Treblinka, your life expectancy was 4.5 hours. That's it. 4.5 hours, sometimes it took longer, but 4.5 hours you were dead. The Nazi numbers in their document that they wrote says all 590,000 Jews of Warsaw need to go into the ghetto. Now, look at the map. You can see there are many, many roads around the ghetto itself. We are over 1/3 of Warsaw's population at the time of the ghetto, and we are put into 2.8% of the city. Try to picture 1/3 of the largest city's population moving through the streets in an endless stream, pushing, wheeling, dragging all their belongings from every part of the city to one small section, crowding one another more and more as they converged. No cars, no horses, no help of any sort were available to us by order of the occupying authorities. Push carts were only our method of conveyance that we had, and these were piled high with household goods, furnishing much amusement to the German onlookers, who delighted in overturning the carts and seeing us scrambling for our effects. Many of the goods were confiscated without explanation. In the ghetto, there was appalling chaos. Thousands of people were rushing around at the last minute trying to find a place to stay. Everything was set up, but still they kept coming, and somewhere, and somehow, for more room was found. The narrow, crooked streets of the most dilapidated section of Warsaw was crowded with pushcarts, their owners going from house to house, asking the inevitable question, have you any rooms? The sidewalks were covered with their belongings. Children wandered, lost and crying. Parents ran here and there seeking them. Their cries drowned out in the tremendous hubbub of 500,000 people, uprooted people.
Rabbi Weinberg has always been teaching us that today's situation is not dissimilar to the years prior to the Holocaust, when there was a serious threat facing the Jewish people.
The whole mission of the Rosh Hashiva is to make people real that there's a spiritual Holocaust going on. And the more that people can be real with that, the more we can do to solve that issue, to bring people to the Jewish people back home, to be Mekadesh Shem Shemayim, to have a Kiddush Hashem. I just walked out of this building here in Auschwitz, and they said on a good day, 24,000 people were murdered. That was a day that was productive. We're losing thousands of people every day to the Jewish people. Just disappearing. All of our families are being affected.
When there were so many people who died in the concentration camps, literally giving up their lives to be able to keep the mitzvahs, there were those who starved to death prematurely because they were non-kosher. There were those who suffered terrible beatings and died as a result of that because they refused to work on Yom Kippur. There are those in the camps who gave up their lives to light a Hanukkah candle, which is not even a Torah mitzvah. So, and when you look around and you see we have all this freedom to do this, the tragedy is glaring. The tragedy is huge. The tragedy is magnified.
When one considers that spiritual life is eternal, physical life is a 70, 80-year process. It's the short little chunk. It's the little opportunity. It's the pros door, Olam Haba. And if somebody misses out on that, he's missing out on eternity. That's a spiritual Holocaust.
We're fighting to save the Jewish people, and we're going to win.
How did I get involved? You know, I was a yeshiva kid, a cheder kid. Yeah? I learned in yeshiva all my life. I learned in Chaim Berlin. My father died when I was 15. I learned in Ner Yisrael. Yeah? I never would have seen any of these people. Yeah? I wouldn't have known what was going on. But when my father died when I was 15, so in the summers I used to work. So the one job that you could get money is you were a salesman. You sold piece goods, you went to department stores, to manufacturers. You sold, they gave you a commission, you could make money, yeah? So I went to, in those days Philadelphia was the boondocks, yeah? But I went further, I went to Toronto, to Montreal. That's really out. I went to Chicago, I went to Miami, you know, I traveled to Texas. I remember I went to Texas, yeah? The Jewish people, they were spread all over, yeah? The Jewish people gave me a warm welcome. They liked the idea of a yeshiva bocher, just making a living, you know, a young guy. They did everything to help me. And we got acquainted. And I turned to Judaism, you know, and they were all very proud of being Jewish. Very proud. Every one of them was proud of being Jewish, yeah? And they liked the yeshiva bocher, yeah? So I would ask them, what are you proud of? You know, I tried to understand them. What are you proud of? What do you think a Jew is, yeah? And they were abysmally ignorant. And it seemed obvious to me, I was a kid, but it seemed obvious to me that they're not going to be able to teach their children and what they're proud of, that they don't know what it is. How are they going to teach their children? They're not going to be able to transfer it, yeah? So, what do? Yeah? As a kid, you know, you don't look at yourself as the responsible party. At least I didn't, yeah? So I would talk to Rosh Hashiva, I'd talk to the rabbis, I'd talk to anybody that listened. You know, assimilation is coming, we gotta do something, we gotta do something, we gotta do something. It wasn't until I was 30 years old, yeah, and nothing was getting done, even though I had made efforts, yeah? I had made efforts to organize, but until I was 30 years old when I realized, you know, in Pirkei Avos it says, look around, nobody's doing the job, make the effort. Yeah? That's when I decided, I can't count on anybody else, I have to try.
That's the Rosh Hashiva. He believes in people. He believes everybody is created b'Tselem Elokim. Hashem, the Almighty God, is infinite. He's real with everything, Rosh Hashiva. And one of the realities is, if you're created b'Tselem Elokim, as long as you understand that and you understand it's not you, then there's nothing that stands in your way. You can do anything. So if every Jew walked around as a proud, upright Jew, understanding what our mission is in this world, our mission as Jews, as part of Klal Yisrael, with such a wonderful history and such a tremendous, magnificent future, if we would plug into that, get rid of our egos and understand that there's nothing that I can do if it's me, but there's everything I can do if it's Hashem. So if you step aside and allow yourself to be a kli in Hashem's hands, as it were, then you can do anything.
Rav Shach came to Yehuda's. He was the sandik by my son Yehuda's bris. It was the first time he came into Eish HaTorah. And he took a look at all the guys in Eish HaTorah. He said, that guy's about tshuva, that guy's about tshuva, that guy's about tshuva, that guy's about tshuva. I said, yeah. So Rav Baruch went over to him and asked him, say a few words. So Rav Shach got up in Eish HaTorah, and it's the first time I ever heard him say this, and I know that he's repeated it a number of times, but I don't think he ever said it before, but he was inspired. And he said this vote. He said, the Navi says, Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecho. Shuva Yisrael, turn back, ad Hashem Elokecho. Ki koshalta ba'avonecho. You've stumbled in the avonis. So he asked, what does one thing have to do with another? Say, Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecho. What does it have to do? Ki koshalta ba'avonecho.
So he answered, from the nichshel and avainis, you can tell what you can do in mitzvahs. And he said, my friends, he said these words. If one man can kill 6 million Jews, one man can save 6 million Jews. Do you hear that? This is Rav Shach speaking in Aish Torah. Yeah? I was still learning all the time, working in the summers, you know. And I was talking to people, what do we do, what do we do? And I even tried to make an organization, you know, nothing. I decided I'll go and ask the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish was known as the Gadol Hador, as a real leader of the generation. I talked to Ben Gurion, you know, he was the leader. So I figured I'll go and ask him, what do we do? I'll tell him this is what's happening, and what do we do? What should I do? What should anybody do? What you tell me, yeah? The only problem was that while I was on the ocean in the Mediterranean, I heard a newscast that the Chazon Ish died Friday night. So I am coming to Eretz Yisrael. The whole point of my coming was, I never dreamt that my coming to Eretz Yisrael was for anything else, yeah? Once I got here, you know, and the first night I slept in the Mir Yeshiva, you know, I went to sleep to learn. I got up in the morning. It was so full of joy, you can't tell you. So I decided I'm going to live in Eretz Yisrael.
People didn't know about Treblinka. That's what we asked. How come those houses that were outside were here? Well, they thought that, look behind you. We can't even see the bus anymore. Don't hear anything. Can't see anything around us. It's all these fir trees, which, if they could speak, would tell us so many secrets. These carriages arrived to this area over here. Franciszek Zabecki writes for us as follows. There were days where 2 or 3 trains stood at Treblinka station outside, the station that we didn't get to stop at, with their unfortunate cargo, waiting their turn to be sent to the death camp. The transport sometimes waited all night, but transfer to the camp was not carried out in the darkness. The cruelty of the security guards, the Germans, the Latvians, and the Ukrainians is difficult to describe. Sadism and torture seemed to know no bounds. I saw how guards who were always drunk would open the freight car doors at night and demand money and valuables. Then they would close the doors, and they would fire into the cars. During the day, the bodies remaining at the station were collected, loaded onto a car, and sent to the death camp. This task was attended to by a group of Jews from the camp under SS and Ukrainian supervision. The train moved slowly through a strange and sad countryside. A moment later, it came to a stop. The door would open noisily. The emptiness and the sadness of the sandy countryside disappeared. Within seconds, a strange fear seized us all. Get out, came the familiar shouts. People began to push. We held one another's hand and jumped down into the sand. Everyone went towards the wall of crowded pine trees. Suddenly, I had a thought. These trees aren't growing. They're all dead.
They planned this, the deception. They planned it, they worked at it to kill us. They were united. They followed orders. They were disciplined. How to fool us. We believed them. That nothing's going to happen. We believe them. Nothing's going to happen. Now, what are we going to do? Nobody's on our side, but what are we going to do? Well, think about it. We're going to work together. Are we going to wake people up? How do we wake them up? What are we going to do? What are we going to think of? Yeah, you got 15 minutes. We talk about a Holocaust, we don't feel it. Anybody who's there, we kind of get it into our emotions, anybody there knows what the heck what they're planning for us. Yeah, we think, oh, man, they hate us. Yeah, what Ahmadinejad wants. You go there, you realize what's going on. Well, I decided I've got to fight this spiritual Holocaust. There's nobody else going to do it, but I have to make the effort. Yeah, so I knew that you got to have an organization. So I started 5 different organizations with different principles. Yeah, they all flopped. They didn't go anywhere. Yeah, that's when I realized that the problem was apathy. Nobody believed it could be done. That was the real problem. People cared much more than they do today, but they didn't believe anything could be done. So I figured the only ones that know it can be done and that feel the necessity of it being done and that will commit themselves to a long-term, a life goal of getting it done, which is the core of an organization, are the people who become Bali Tshuva. The guys who come from the secular world and realize what the heck they were going through, a Holocaust, and they see that by learning they can wake up, they realize it can do it, and they know how necessary it is. So I figured they'll be the core of an organization that will succeed.
At the beginning of Aish HaTorah, there was one apartment. We had the same place that we studied, we ate, we slept, and that sense of very humble beginnings actually played a very important role in everyone's realization that they could build something from the ground up.
You know, there were altogether 5 fellas came with me to start Aish HaTorah. Only 5. For $1 million, we had to go down to the Kaisel, and every time you got to go to the Kaisel and back to the Kaisel. It wasn't very good, so we went for body count. Anybody that we could drag in. We wanted to get $1 million. But from the beginning, I told them, we're here to change the world, yeah? And they would look around and say, who's he talking to? You know? So I would challenge them and say, look, you don't believe it can be done? If you're willing to sign up for 5 years, yeah, I will take you private and I'll show you it can be done. Yeah, but if you decide it can be done, you got to sign up. There's only one guy that I remember said, okay, you show me, I'll sign up. That was Rabbi Shalom Schwartz.
There was a sense that if you appreciated that the world was in trouble, that there were things that you needed, that you wanted to change in the world, then it made sense to devote your life with those that saw it the same way to making a difference. And here you had someone that had wisdom, had commitment, and he said that there was a way to make that difference that actually stemmed from our tradition as Jews, from our heritage. It wasn't a new idea. That was the power of it. It was an old idea, but it was the freshness of its commitment, the freshness of its touching you deeply on a personal level, that this heritage of a few thousand years old was being offered to you as a means of lifting the world, of bringing the world back to its own purpose, helping people to find themselves, helping yourself to fulfill that desire to make a difference, not simply because you're looking for meaning, but because there actually is some ultimate meaning to existence that's been given to you as an offering, as something that you can help create, help bring closer. And when it touched you, when you felt that sense of personal commitment to it, and when you were given the opportunity to actually do something about it, that combination was, for those of us that felt it, irresistible.
It was the hardest moment of my life ever to know that we were about to die, and yet to act so that we don't make a spectacle for the Germans, for the Nazis who are watching us. To make a spectacle, you know, to give them more enjoyment, that was something we just didn't want to do. So we did the Jewish thing. We said the Shema Yisrael, and my mother insisted that we all say parts of the Vidui. I didn't want to tell her that it was going to be gas. And it was so hard for me not to scream, not to jump, not to do something. It was the hardest thing ever. I must have used up kilos of energy in those few moments. But then a miracle happened. Gas didn't come out, but water. The amazing thing is, it doesn't matter how atheist the person was, or how religious the person was, they all came back to the Makor at the very end. The Makor was Shema Yisrael. That was the shout that the Jewish people screamed. And we have testimonies of Nazis, SS people, who we caught afterwards. And they all asked them the same questions in the testimonies. You can read them. They're in the archives. And there's a book out called the Nuremberg Files as well. And they say it in the same things. So what did you hear the Jews shout? He says, didn't matter where they were from. I heard them shout Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael. I didn't understand it at the beginning. These are the SS saying it. But Shema Yisrael, that's what I heard the whole time. Shema Yisrael.
I walk into the room of the shoes, and I completely fell apart. There's something about seeing it that is so real, because there are literally, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of shoes there. I'll tell you my first reaction after I walked in and I just broke down. I said, my first feeling, and I almost regret that I didn't do it, I wanted to just take off my shoes and toss them in there.
There was a man who came once after the war to his Rebbe, or to the Rav, and he told him with tremendous emotion that he wanted to donate a Sefer Torah. And the Rav asked him, what was it? Why was he so emotional about the Sefer Torah? So he told him that he was a Holocaust survivor, and one day he woke up, and it's hard for you to understand this, because we're here on such a nice day. Last time we were here, it's a different experience. It's covered in snow. It's freezing cold. You're bundled up with the finest coats, the biggest coats, extra sweaters and gloves, and you're still freezing. You didn't have shoes in the Holocaust, Tzvi told us. You died. So this guy lost his pair of shoes. And finally he was able to get another pair, however we got them. And he's about to put them on, and suddenly he notices that the insides of the shoes are made of a cloth of a Sefer Torah. And he gives out a yell. How can I walk? How can I walk and step on the word of Hashem every single step that I take? But finally he makes the cheshbon, the chai b'hem. He remembers that it's not one of the mitzvahs of Yehareg v'Ayav, and he puts on the shoes. And all throughout the war, he said, every step I took was like a knife through my heart. So now I swore to myself that when I got out of this, I would donate a Sefer Torah. Rabbi Isai, mi ka'amcha Yisrael. That a guy is sitting in the Holocaust. He doesn't know if he's going to live or if he's going to die. He doesn't have enough food. He's about to starve to death, and he's feeling guilty about wearing a pair of shoes that's lined with a piece of cloth from the Sefer Torah.
Rav Weinberg, he understood that, he's got this great model, he's got this great idea, he's going to create a Torah, he's going to create tremendous people, he's going to send them out to do Kiruv, and it's working, and it's fine. And then he says, oh, it's wonderful, there's only one problem. We're losing the war. It's a great system, and the guys are fabulous, and they're becoming leaders in their communities, and they got 4 continents and 26 cities, and each one of them has got success stories. The only problem left is that we're losing. Other than that, it was a great idea. So he says, Eis Lasses Lashem. I mean, if we wait around and just rely on the Rav Noach Weinbergs of the world, or the Aish Torah people of the world, or the Ohr Somayachs of the world, or the other great Kiruv organizations and partners in Torah and everything, we just rely on them, it'll just be nice ink, a couple of nice articles, nice memory, few nefashos here and there. Each one's important, don't get me wrong, right? But once you see that the war is going to be long, long, long over before we can even fight it, so he says, we got to enlist. So then he brings it to the people like we're doing now and says, let's go. So I grew up went to the best yeshivas in the world, learned for many years after high school, Medrash. I'm still learning the last 20 years in Yeshiva Torah Vodaas. And one day I get a call, and it's from my good friend Yonah Weinreb, who says there's a fellow coming in from Aish Torah, this is 1989. He says, coming from Aish Torah, he's going to speak in our shul. I'm afraid nobody's going to show up. I said, Aish what? He said, yeah, Aish Torah, I've never heard of Aish Torah, I don't know what he was talking about. He said, please, could you come down and listen to the guy? The man's name was Matti Berger. Never heard of the man in my life. So I said, listen, Yonah, I got so much to do. I had a psychotherapy practice. I had a very large family by that time already. So I said, Yonah, just for you. But I'm coming and I'm going and that's it. Little did I know that evening would change my life. That evening changed my life. I walked in, I sat down, this guy got up, said, okay, and he spoke in a way that I had never heard before. And he spoke about basically ideas of what later I found out to be the Discovery Seminar, and ideas about proofs, logical, reasonable, scientific proofs that Torah is Misinai, that Torah is true. He was offering evidence that God wrote the Torah. I never questioned it. Well, it wasn't like I needed it. I didn't need proof of that. I was a Neman through and through. I was learning Yom V'Layla. But the idea that you could do this, that you could explain to people who had never learned that this was true, completely blew my mind. Completely blew my mind. And at the end of his talk, I sat there stunned, and I walked up to him, and I said these few words that changed my life. I said to him, Matti, I want to be you. And that's when I say that I went from an FFB to become a Baal Tshuva.
Why did the Almighty say that the day of the building of the Mishkan, the day of the Sos and the Simcha of Am Yisrael, that day the greatest of the Jews will die? What's going on? Why? That's the Yom Simchas Liboy. So you got to understand, a Nevuah L'Ra, that there's going to be a death, a Nevuah L'Ra is a warning. It's a warning. Moshe, watch out. When that Mishkan is finished, watch out. You better do the job right, or the greatest of the Jews will die. Nadav Avihu died? Oh, Sviv of Nashara Meyoid. All of a sudden, if they get killed with fire, what's with us? Yeah? Right? Scared the life out of them. Right? So Moshe, after Nadav Avihu died, Moshe Rabbeinu said to Aaron, they're greater than you and I. Now, what in the world does he say? He's not saying sheker to comfort Aaron. How in the world does Nadav Avihu, anybody knows? Moshe Aaron b'choyanov. You know, Moshe Aaron. What do you mean Nadav Avihu were greater? Yeah, what is he talking about? So in the Medrash it says Nadav Avihu were walking after Moshe Aaron, And they said to each other, Ad Masa Yamusu Skenim Elu, until when we have to wait until these elders, until these leaders die, so that we can lead the people. What are you talking about? They were ambitious, they were waiting, they're impatient. What the heck? This is not the Vaviu Kedoshim, yeah? They were the greatest of Jews. What are they talking? That tells us they knew Moshe and Aaron were the Gedolim. They knew that they didn't compare to them. What was their mistake? Their mistake was, you can lead. Everybody's got to do b'shvili nivra olam. You got to do what you can do. You see a need, do it.
One of the first things that I heard from Reb Noach Weinberg, I heard him say that everyone is a teacher. And he explained, when it says, Lilmoid ulalamed, and that the whole point of everything you learn is to be able to give it over, and his whole slant was, it doesn't matter what you know. Once you know something, now you got to give it over to somebody else. Rav Noach Weinberg was saying, you don't have to know, not only you don't have to know everything to give it over, you can't wait until you know everything to give it over. Whatever you know, you got to give. It's know it, give it, come back, learn more, give that. It's constant. It's a constant give and take, and a constant part of your limud is the lalamed. It has to be. So that was completely unique to me.
The Rechavis Havav says, and we're going to give you a copy of Rechavis Havav before we go, that one man, even if he's like a Novi, a Sholem, the Godel Hador, the Godel of the door that ever was, yeah? He has tremendous chusim. Is nothing compared to someone who's Mekarev V'choikim. Rechavis Havav is Shar Avos Hashem, yeah? Perek Vov. So I always asked him, my father was a chassid, and he always wanted me to learn Rechavis Havav. Chassidim learn Rechavis Havav. And I learned Rechavis Havav. In honor of my father, I learned Rechavis Havav. Until Baruch Hashem, I got through to it. And it's very hard lashon, but I got it. But it always bothered me. Rechavis Havav is a Rishon. Top Rishonim, yeah? But where do you get it from? We know Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, right? Kol ha-mitzvahs kulan einam cheshuvim k'Talmud Torah v'Talmud Torah choshev kol ha-mitzvahs kulan. Yeah? Where did it come? Till I realized it's a Beferish Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Asor ha-deiros min Noach me Adam ad Noach. The Torah tells us 10 generations from Adam ad Noach. Lehudia kam erech hapayim lefonov. The Rebbeinu Shalom should have destroyed the world every one of those generations. Until finally he wiped them out. All these generations were aggravating the Almighty. He should have destroyed the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. He should have destroyed every one of them, but the Rebbeinu Shalom Baruch Hapei, Ad Sheba Avraham Avinu v'Kibul Tzchak Kulam. Yeah? Who was living in those 10 generations? Who was living right from the first in the 10 generations? Shem ve'Eva, Nevi'im, Rosh Yeshivas. Yaakov Avinu learned there after he learned by Avraham and Yitzchak. Yeah, everybody knows that. Medrash says that Avraham and Yitzchak learned by Shem ve'Eva too. Rivka went to consult with Shem ve'Eva, yeah? What does it mean that they should have been wiped out? That generations should have been wiped out? Is that what it says? The Raven asks, what the heck, what's going on? The Kesef Mishnah answers, they taught everybody who came to learn. Avraham Avinu went out to save Rechoikim.
My grandfather was very historically minded, I think. I asked him recently, his 80th birthday, I said, you're so mindful of the Holocaust. And you see around what's going on. It was in the time Iran was just denying actively. Aren't you concerned there's soon going to be no more survivors? There'll be no one to testify what happened. And he looked at me like I was crazy. He didn't understand the question. And I looked at him and I said, there's gonna be no more survivors. No one to tell the story. You know the story. You were there. Your family was there. But it's all over. Doesn't it concern you? And he shook his head. He said, it's not true. He said, we're all survivors. He said, if Hitler had his way, none of us here, none of us would have been here.
We met an Israeli traveler, a 22-year-old kid that was traveling through, and he told one of the rabbis on the trip that he was studying World War II, not from a Jewish perspective, but from its impact on European society.
He was alienated from Judaism completely, yeah? And from the Jewish people, he was going out with a non-Jew and he was planning to marry her, and he was traveling, it had nothing to do with Jews. He didn't join any Jewish group. He just was something to see. There were other things to see in Europe.
He went with us from Lublin to Majdanek, and at the end of Majdanek, when Rabbi Solomon told the story about his father, who was a Holocaust survivor, and we were there by the ashes, and he sang Kel Mali Rachamim, to watch him completely fall apart, also dramatized and brought home, the enormity of the Holocaust and what had happened there in a way that you really felt it.
He didn't know what he was crying about, but that realization dawned on him that his soul was awakened. Yeah? He knew he was on the wrong path.
This is the place. This is the time of MS. This is the last time, maybe. Shari Demos, learning Alu. To Mamish, open your heart in this place. There are people there's a survivor in Israel who lives today with the memory of the fact that her child was snatched from her on the ramp that we're standing in right now. As a prisoner came, took the baby out of her hands, snatched it out of her hands and gave it to an older woman behind. And when she tried to take it back, he slapped her one. He says, you're carrying on. She screamed and screamed and screamed. This old woman held the baby. She went to life. The old woman with the baby went to death. If she would have had the baby, they would have sent them both. Just the dilemmas that are going through people's minds on this ramp, we can never even think about, we can never even deal with. As we said before, Iberleben, the will to survive.
Moshe Resnick, who's one of our old Talmidim, he broke down when he saw the baby clothes because he lost a child.
My daughter's 4th year inside is a week from this coming Shabbos. So I remember someone told me during the Shiva, said, when you lose a child, it's like an amputation. When we talk about time and healing someone, we don't ever mean that the pain goes away. We just mean the person learns to live without the limb. I remember my wife and I, we had to learn how to smile again. How to laugh again. I never understood what it means to live with the Korban. That always, everything you do, every simcha, is always under the shadow of the Korban. I never understood what that meant, but now I do. One critical lesson, we all know it's true. We've said it before here. Hashem really means business. I always feel the most frightening, the most powerful section of the Chumash is the Mabul. Because what's the message of the Mabul? The message of the Mabul is it's better for millions of people to die and mankind has a chance to achieve its purpose than for all those people to live, but they'll never achieve their purpose. And during the whole period, we went through a long stretch. It was like 2 or 3 years at the beginning, and then a long stretch where we thought it was taken care of, and then very intense 3 years at the end. I was always sure it would work out. I was always sure, even when the prognosis was terrible, and we're doing experimental treatments, I was always sure it has to work out. And what I learned is that it doesn't always work out in Olam Hazeh. It doesn't always. As much as we want it to, as much as God wants it to, it doesn't always work out the way we wanted it to. And we also have to realize that there are some values that are more valuable than the comforts in the life of this world. And we have to realize that Hashem loves us so much, He's even willing to bring a Holocaust if that's the only way to wake us up.
They would be able to fit in 2,000 people at any one time. Good production day in Auschwitz, 24,000 people. Within 35 minutes, everybody was dead, and people could go into the gas chamber to be able to clear it out. Towards the end of the war, the Sonderkommander of Crematoria No. 3 decided to take upon themselves a daring escapade and attempt to blow up one of the crematoria. So this is what happened. The dynamite came into the camp and was located in the women's camp, which is where the barracks, the stone barracks, are. 7 women decided that there was only one way to smuggle the dynamite into the crematoria. They would take a stick of dynamite and make sure that they were then selected for death that day. The Sonderkommander could then retrieve the dynamite when they went into the gas chambers to remove the dead bodies. And this is exactly what they did. They got told who the 7 women were, what they looked like, what their number was on the arm, and they went to find them after the gassing of them. As the bodies were pulled out of the gas chamber, 2 unbelievable things happened. 2 of the women, sisters, had not totally succumbed to the gas, and miraculously, they survived. Number 2, the dynamite was intact. The Sonderkommander placed the sticks and set up the explosion which destroyed the building beyond repair. Just unbelievable Mesiras Nefesh which is going on here. But these women are prepared to, hopefully if they can save 1 Jew, 2 Jews, 5 Jews, just by blowing up the gas, it was worth it for them, from their perspective. It's unbelievable.
The Rosh Yeshiva want us to become more serious about our own commitment and the type of determination that's needed to really win the fight by seeing the very clear determination and commitment that the Germans had to annihilate the Jewish people.
What Rabbi Weinberg communicated to us as the core message that he personally received from visiting the camps, which was very surprising to me, was that we should learn from the Nazis how to be serious about the mission.
I took the rabbis to the concentration camps. Yeah, they had to see the methodology and the commitment and the perseverance that these Nazis had to kill Jews. Yeah? They didn't stop at anything. They had conferences. They started with carbon monoxide from diesel engines, yeah, and it was too inefficient, yeah, and they started with poison gas, and they experimented, they got cyclone, whatever it is, yeah. They started, what are you going to do with the bodies? First they try to bury them. Too many bodies to bury, yeah. They figured they'll burn them, so they used railroad ties and with gasoline. Too inefficient. They went crematorium, then they improved the crematoriums. And they said, how are we going to fool these Jews so that they come willingly, you know? Well, they use a Judenrat. They planned it down to the end. And we've got to plan the same way to give life. They planned to kill. We got to plan to give life. What does it mean, life? You're not thinking, what are you living for? You're a dead man walking. You're not thinking, what are the Jewish people really about? You're a dead Jew walking, yeah? How do we get their attention? What's the oxygen, the cyclone? What is the oxygen that will get their mind working, yeah? A little CPR, yeah? And we've got to be determined. We have to have conferences. We have to improve our techniques until we are able to wake up our brothers and save them from assimilation.
I told you, we are outraged by these monsters. We have to get their passion, their determination, their dedication. How the heck they're dedicated to fight God. That's what the dedication is, yeah? So what's our dedication? How are we going to be as dedicated as these monsters? Determined, thinking, planning, how to improve bringing life, how to improve understanding what we're after, understanding how to get people to eradicate their westernisms, their corruption.
The reality of seeing what they did, and as opposed to as an idea, just being there, really touching the fact that they killed millions of Jews and seeing how organized they were, it just makes it more real that it can be done. In other words, if they can do this for bad, for evil, to destroy the Jewish people, it becomes much more tangible to me and much more plausible that you can really do it for good.
The sadists, the Nazis, they had to have fun, not enough to torture. So they told the Jews, they gathered the Jews and they said, we want you to dance for us. Dance. In the concentration camp, after a day of work, you're surviving on starvation diet, yeah, dance. What can they do? The Nazis, they started dancing. Sing. It's too quiet. You can't sing. So he started singing. What did they sing? Ashereinu matov chalkeinu. I mean, a song that they knew. Sing louder. Dance faster. Louder. Faster. Louder. Faster. Until the Jews, they got it. They started singing. Ashereinu matov chalkeinu uma anoim goraleinu. They started enjoying themselves. They danced harder. They sang louder. The Germans understood, hey, there's something wrong here. It's not going the way. This isn't entertaining. No, this is a rebellion, something rebellion. They said, shut up.
They wouldn't shut up. Ashereinu matov chalkeinu umma. Shut up! They're thinking. They started beating him with their whips and their stop, stop, stop. They couldn't stop them until they had to shoot. What the heck did they hear? What did they hear? They heard Hashem Elokeinu, Ashereinu matov chalkeinu. That's the reality. They heard that reality. Do you get it? Because it was so bitter, they forgot this stupid world and they got into the reality. Ashereinu matov chalkeinu. We felt the Tsar. We felt the Tsar. You saw the shoes, you saw the eyeglasses, you saw the children's clothes, you saw the prosthetics that they took from us, yeah? We felt terrible, yeah? We heard stories, you feel terrible. The Tsar of 6 million Jews in the gas chambers, yeah? Burnt in the crematoriums. The Tsar, you felt the Tsar, every one of us. How many of us felt the Tsar of Avinu Avarachamon that was with every single child that was crushed and every single mother that a child was taken away from her, and was with every single Jew in the gas chambers, and was with every single Jew all the years that they suffered? Is that a fact? How many of us thought about the Tsar Shechina?
In 1942, the world knew about this place. They've got pictures about this place from 1942. There's a man called Jan Karski who fled from Poland, who told the world about what was going on, and that was in 1942. FDR Roosevelt, who decided not to allow the Jews who were fleeing to come into America at the time. And other people like him, and the Evian Conference, where Canada is quoted as saying, none is too many. And Australia quoted as saying, we do not have a refugee problem, and we're certainly not desirous of having one. And the British who said, we're not going to accept not one more Jew. The world was silent. That's all they did. They weren't responsible. That's all they did.
I know that if I was there living at that time, I would want to be able to tell my grandchildren and my children that I tried my best to make a difference. Today, when the cries of pain are more subtle, I say to myself again, I want to be able to tell my children and my grandchildren, I was there, I saw it happening, and I took some action.
The only reason I started my first yeshiva or my first organization and all the subsequent was because I believed one thing, that if I come to a human father and I say, your son is drowning, I need your rope. Would you please give me your rope? The guy's going to give me his rope, yeah? Is that right? So I'm going to come to the Almighty and say, Almighty, I need you to help me. I want to save your children. Do you get that? That's the only reason I ever started. I didn't know what to do. How do you make money? How do you raise money? I mean, I never asked for money. Yeah. I figured the Almighty will help me. I didn't know how to make an organization. I'll try it. The Almighty has to help. He's got to help me. I'm going for His children. He's got to help us. We're going for His children.
Ultimately, Aish HaTorah and Rabbi Weinberg are not about Aish HaTorah and Rabbi Weinberg. The issue is the Jewish people. The issue is assimilation, and the issue is bringing back Klal Yisrael.
Looking back, how can we thank the Almighty for all these wonderful neshamas and for all of the kiruv? I mean, we get some reward for all of the kiruv being done all over the world. It's amazing. It's amazing. The Almighty has showered us with blessings. Yeah. But we're in trouble. We haven't even begun. We haven't even begun. If, God forbid, they were killing 100,000 Jews in the United States every year, everybody would know instantly, every Jew would know instantly, even secular Jews would know instantly what we got to do. We got to get an army, we got to get a defense force, we got to get weapons, we got to figure out where the enemy is, we got to figure out how to counter them. We know it immediately because blood. Yeah? We religious Jews, we know this is worse, that there's no retreat. We got to win.